So hello everyone, my name is Gustavo Razzetti. Welcome to a self-awareness webinar. I'm going to be your host today. I don't know if it's good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. By the way, do you mind sharing? I'm in Chicago. Where are you joining us from? There's a chat box here at your right, and you might share your location. We usually receive people from all over the world. So I'd like to see where you're based. So we have people from Delaware in the US. We have people from Munich, Germany, Atlanta. Also other folks from Chicago, so fantastic. Brooklyn, blessings to you too, Rosangel. Istanbul, Turkey. I was there last year in May giving a conference. So yeah, speaking at a conference, so fantastic. So thank you guys. Hopefully you can see the slides that I just shared. Today's webinar, as I mentioned, it's about the power of self-awareness. Of course, self-awareness is very important from an individual standpoint, but we're also going to talk about how self-awareness really is important for a team development. Okay, so the first thing I want to start is with a story about, I was helping a company a couple of 1 or 2 years ago, and I remembered that the CEO was really worried. It was a woman. She was really worried about her team performance. Basically, she defined the culture of the organization as backstabbers, people that didn't talk to each other. They were creating more obstacles rather than trying to collaborate. And what happened throughout the workshop, we started working with the team, coaching the team, increasing self-awareness, helping people to open up, to share how they feel about each other and see what are the real reasons that they were not collaborating. The funny thing is, at some point, we realized that actually the culture wasn't as toxic as the CEO thought. But basically, she wasn't promoting awareness. She wasn't aware herself, and her own behavior was getting in the way. Funny enough, this was a 2-day workshop, and at some point, the CEO decided to leave because she couldn't stand. Not only realizing that her team was opening up, they were trying to collaborate and were trying to fix their own things and being very reflective on their own barriers, but she couldn't do that herself. So many times, leaders are not self-aware and they harm their teams. So talking about that, like Richard Feynman, the famous scientist, said, the first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you're the easiest person to fool. So we cannot tickle ourselves. Try to do that now. You can't, because your body kind of realize it's yourself that's trying to tickle your own body. But unfortunately, our mind can deceive ourselves. And many times we believe that we know ourselves much better than we actually do. So there's a poll there, and I'd like you to share, if you don't mind, how much do you know yourself? Do you think you're really self-aware, that you're so-so, or that you don't really know yourself? I want to see your own assessment of how well you know yourself. So we're getting some answers. Hopefully you can see the results as well. So we see there's a lot of so-sos and pretty well. So it's a little bit divided, the audience, when it comes to awareness, and that's okay. The most important thing is a lot of research about this, and how well we know ourselves, because knowing oneself is not just about having a good life and enjoying who you are, but it's important that if you don't know who you are, you cannot lead yourself, thus you cannot lead other people. But the most important factor, and this is, don't take this personal, those who answered pretty well, because we have over half of the respondents saying that they know themselves pretty well, is that research shows that 90% 90% of people believe that they're very self-aware when actually only 15 of those people are. And this is more dramatic when it comes to executives, and I'm going to share that in a second. So a quick introduction about who we are. I mean, my name, as I mentioned, is Gustavo Razzetti. I'm a change instigator, so I help teams and companies transform and explore and become more innovative and more human and more adaptive. I'm the founder of Liberationist. We are a company that helps purpose-driven organizations make positive change. Basically, we are like a plugin, so I don't believe in the traditional consultancy model of telling clients how they should behave, but it's more about being part of the team, embedding ourselves in that team and helping people grow and become the best version of themselves. We do this in 3 different ways. So we have workshops that are focused on building specific skills related to change leadership. We also, as I mentioned before, we facilitate team offsites for different types of team that either need to improve their game, they're going through hard times or whatever, and we help them improve their culture and how they work. And of course, we also do consulting for those companies that want to become more human, more adaptive, more innovative. Basically, they want to transform their culture. Our positive change framework is based self-awareness, which we are discussing today, positive thinking, how can we reframe our limitations or constraints into superpowers, smart working. No? We know that many people complain that their work experience is really annoying and frustrating, so we want to help teams experiment with new ways of working that are going to make them more agile. It's going to make work more exciting, but also simplify how they do things. Wise leadership, which is about coaching leaders to help unleash the best version, not the worst, of their teams. A fearless culture that we conducted a webinar last month about it. So it's how can we remove fear from organizations so people feel safe to speak up, experiment, and take risks and become more innovative. And last but not least, how can we develop as an organization a purpose that's going to bring people together around something that's bigger than themselves. Last but not least, I mean, I've written a couple of books, also an ebook, and I write a lot of articles. So if you're interested, you can subscribe for free in liberationist.org/subscribe. I send a weekly newsletter with insights for change makers that include tools, exercises, videos, and articles, some that I write myself and from other sources. So feel free to join. We have over 25 or 30,000 subscribers so far. Cool crowd of people. So back into today's webinar, what I will cover today, and once again, self-awareness is a very complex topic. So I'm going to start by defining what do we mean by self-awareness, how it affects our individual and collective behaviors when it comes to communication, collaboration, and creativity. How can we turn those blind spots into bright spots? No? So basically turn our weaknesses into something that we can act upon and improve. And I'm going to share 5 specific ways or tools that you can use to increase both self and team awareness. And at the end, of course, we're going to leave some room for discussion and Q&A. So as I mentioned earlier, we are more unaware than aware, so we know that we know ourselves better than we actually do. And when it comes to women versus men, women perform, no surprise, much better because they practice more self-reflection. And 19% of women have demonstrated that they are more self-aware compared to 4% of male. So what is self-awareness? I'm going to start with a definition, and then we're going to go deeper into the concept and make it more relatable. But self-awareness is the conscious knowledge of one's character, feelings, motives, and desires. So basically, it's understanding who we are, but most importantly, how we act, and being conscious about it, because most of the times we're doing things that we don't realize. So the other day, for example, I was in the car with my wife and one of my kids, and my kid was telling something, and I interrupted because I had some kind of urgent thought that I want to share with my wife. And in that precise moment, I realized, oh, I'm interrupting. They're talking about something different. I need to wait. So I say, sorry, I shut up and wait. So many times we do this. Many people interrupt someone who's presenting at a meeting or sharing their thoughts. And that's because we're not self-aware. Increasing self-aware, as I mentioned, is about understanding and being more mindful about what we're doing, but most importantly, why we're doing it. So what's driving that? So I was interrupting my kid. Was it because I was anxious? Was it because I wasn't paying attention? Was it because I didn't care about what he was saying? So we need to start reflecting and understand why we do the things we do. For example, like many times, we believe that we know the right answer, we're overconfident, but as research shows, in most of the cases, we are wrong. We're basing decisions, and sometimes we're purchasing a house or investing our marketing budget or whatever in projects because we believe we are right, but we end making the wrong decision. So self-awareness is about taking distance to watch your life like if you're watching a movie. No? This is the observing self. You create a space between you and your actions, your thoughts, and your emotions. So basically try to distance yourself and try to see what's going on, what's happening, and try to alert your own self when you're acting in a way that's not the right one. So the opposite of awareness is living on autopilot. No? Like you don't know that the car is driving or yourself is driving on its own. There's a lot of research that shows that people believe that 50% of their time, they're not consciously aware of what they're doing, right? And actually, this is the study in United Kingdom and Europe, 96% of people admit to making most decisions on autopilot. Like, for example, one of the things that the research shows that many people cannot recall the movie they watched last night. So basically, you spend 1 hour and a half, 2 hours watching a movie, and people don't even remember the name or what was the movie about. So that's how we're so disconnected that we can't even remember basic things that we do throughout our days. But once again, autopilot, it's not wrong. So Daniel Kahneman's a Nobel laureate and also the author of a book called Slow and Fast. I recommend it. It's a huge book, but it's really interesting. I recommend that you read it. Basically talks about like we have two types of thinking. One is the autopilot, which is when we're acting on inertia. Basically, it's more fast, intuitive, and conscious. It's much more applied for everyday decisions. So, for example, if you're driving your car, you're not checking every movement, you're shifting gears, you're turning the lights, all that stuff. It's something that you do on autopilot because you've done those things so many times that you need to reflect and think about it. On the other end, intentional behavior, it's about slowing down, applying logical thinking, being more conscious, putting more effort in what you do and how you think. So it's basically acting more mindfully. Once again, it's not that one is right and the other one is wrong. If we're always acting mindfully, we can get exhausted and maybe we don't act. But if we are always acting on inertia, what happens is then we make a lot of things without realizing what we are doing or making mistakes, of course. So why is it that very few of us really know ourselves? So why are we unaware? Tasha Eurich, who wrote the book Insight, and she's an psychologist, an expert on self-awareness, basically explains three key reasons. First, because we're human beings, so we're born with blind spots. We're unaware of how we behave and why, and that comes in our DNA. Second is this feel-good effect. We all love ourselves, hopefully, so we tend to see ourselves in a more positive light. And last but not least, and no surprise, the cult of self, this culture of we like ourselves and being more exposed and being more self-absorbed, has been growing in the past 2 decades, and of course has received a huge boost in the past decade due to social media. So, but there's a deeper reason why most people don't know themselves. And this is a little bit trickier because many times we believe we have problems, but the problems that we define as such are actually what? They're actually symptoms. So many people talk about that knowing oneself is know what's your purpose in life, what's my passion, what's my mission. Of course, those are very important aspects in our life, but there's some stuff that are also as important and more critical, which is how do you deal with your problems? And I'm not talking the everyday problems, but your basic problems. Are you self-centered? Are you risk averse? Are you a person that keeps yourself constantly busy so you don't face yourself? Are you avoiding other people? So what are the key issues that you have and how those affects how you become more aware or not in other aspects in your life? But the good side, the upside is we can learn, and that's what we'll discuss today, and you can increase your self-awareness, you can practice it. And the more self-aware you become, the more clarity you gain. You can see your life in a clearer fashion, but most importantly, things seem or become easier to you. So for example, we know that people that are more self-aware can also be more present. So that increases productivity because we don't get distracted with many other things around us. By uncovering our blind spots, we can improve as an individual and turn some weaknesses into strengths. Self-awareness also brings clarity and transparency. We don't feel the need to hide things. We don't need to hide who we are to others or to ourselves. And that's great for collaboration. And of course, it builds this mindset of continuous development, self-development. So the more you learn, the more you practice, the more you want to improve yourself. So the notion of self-awareness has a lot of has been around for a couple of decades, no? Especially in the business way, and a lot of researchers try to understand how does it affect how leaders operate. No? So one of the key findings, and if you have an MBA, don't take this personally by any means, but basically researchers discovered that self-awareness, being self-aware, matters more than actually having an MBA. So there were two big studies. One, for example, that divided like around 40% of Fortune 500 CEOs have an MBA. And so this study tracked CEOs for over a decade, tried to see how the companies of the CEOs that were MBAs perform against those that weren't. And surprise, the companies whose CEOs didn't have an MBA perform much better from a financial, culture standpoint, results, etc. Then a second study on the same stuff basically compared CEOs that were self-aware against those who weren't. And of course, the results showed and confirm again that being self-aware makes you a better leader. When it comes to teams, that's also very important. And another research, this time from the DePaul University here in Chicago, basically study the impact of self-awareness in how teams work and collaborate. And the first thing that they found out is when it comes to making decisions, having clarity, having that self-awareness helps understand your biases, it helps understand the things you don't know, and most importantly, that you're not being overconfident. So, no surprise, the teams that are more self-aware make much better decisions. they coordinate, they collaborate, they work together much, much better, like 3 times those who are not. And last but not least, no surprise, they're very good at managing conflict because people don't take things so personally. They are more self-reflective. They're trying to improve. So they're trained and they are practicing all the time, becoming better at managing tensions and conflicts with your coworkers. So if you're a leader, because we are all are leaders, we're leading projects, we're leading larger teams, we're leading a company, regardless of your actual role, we're all trying to persuade people to do other stuff to be better. So we're all leaders, right? But if we're not self-aware, we cannot be a good leader. So we become, like most leaders that are unaware, they're overconfident. So they believe they perform much better, they're more competent, and they augment their abilities. Also, we have this cult of charismatic leaders, and what happens is leaders become in love with themselves. They love to be loved by others and appreciated by others, and all that positive feedback that they get all the time, that they lose their intellectual humility. Instead of trying to understand how they can learn more, they become this kind of perfect charismatic leader. They want to be in the news, they want to be adored, but they forget to learn and constantly grow. And last but not least, instead of being mindful, instead of being more aware, they become more narcissistic. So another explanation of what happens that leaders and most of us are not self-aware is what it's called the introspection illusion. This is a phenomenon that was researched and coined the term by Emily Proning, a social psychologist from Princeton. And basically, one of the studies that she did is that she started asking different people about, like, okay, how would you compare yourself to others when it comes to driving a car? Are you a better driver? Are you the same? Are you worse? Then what about your smarts? Do you think you're smarter than the rest? Do you think that you're modest than the rest? Do you think that you make better decisions than other people? And what happened is that most of the people self-evaluate themselves like they were much better. Their self-assessment did that, oh, I'm by far above average. But the most interesting thing is we cannot all be above average, right? Someone needs to be below average to create that average. So what happens is we have this practice of believing that we're much better than everyone else, regardless in what aspect of our lives. And this also happens like when we talk, for example, like, do you follow norms in your company, or do you follow rules in everyday life? And most people say that they don't, but everyone else does. So everyone else is more like sheep, a crowd of sheep, but we're not. We don't conform to social norms. We are unique, we're different, etc. So this thing, this appreciation, which is of course false, it's based that when we're judging others, we just observe their behavior. So imagine that you see someone in your company, a coworker, that's always checking his phone while you're talking and you're presenting or sharing a report. Probably you're going to jump into the conclusion that that person is not present, is disrespectful, doesn't care about what you're saying, blah, blah, blah. But when it comes to assess ourselves, we don't use our behavior, we use our values. So if you think you are smart, if you think that you're always, you have a high ethical standard, then you're going to filter your behaviors and how you judge yourself on that. So the lesson is, first, you need to start thinking about, are your behaviors right or not, and not just filter your actions through your values, because then you're always going to assess yourself better. But also, instead of judging people, imagine someone is driving in the highway very fast, and well, is that person a crazy driver, or maybe that person has an emergency, is getting late to work, is having an issue. So try to understand what's going on and not judging people because of their behaviors. And that's going to eliminate a lot of tension, especially in the workplace. So I'm going to ask you a question, and now we can go back to, and you can share in the chat. Please share with me what's your superpower and what's your kryptonite. And I'm going to model this by sharing mine first, which is my superpower is like I see a lot of things that seem unrelated and disconnected, and then find some insights, something that brings those things together. My kryptonite, on the other side, is that I'm impatient. So I want to do everything fast, and sometimes I'm impatient when people take a lot of time to do something, right? So if you mind going to the chat box and share, and once again, we're not judging anyone, so this is confidential, it's just for us to have a little bit of fun, but also for you to reflect. Please share what's your superpower and what's your kryptonite. And I'm going to explain a little bit about the two of them and how they work. Okay. I'm going to share the prompt. Share your superpower and your kryptonite. I have Carrie saying that my superpower is creatively combining informations in ways others don't see. Fantastic. So we have a volunteer. I don't know if the others are thinking. I mean, this is just whatever comes to mind. This is not a test. We just want to know. Rosangel says that empathy are both her superpower and her kryptonites. Rob, superpower is high empathy, understanding of people, and kryptonite is holding people accountable. Nice. So as you can see, there are some common themes, but also each of us has their own superpowers and also their kryptonite. The most important thing about this is when it comes to not only business schools, but actually high school or elementary school, we're taught about that we have weaknesses and we have strengths, right? And kind of the superpower and the kryptonite is similar to that. But the most important thing is they're not right or wrong. And that's something I want to start working on. It's becoming more mindful and more aware of how you use them. So for example, my impatience can get in the way and make people a bit kind of anxious and maybe don't get the best out of them. But on the other hand, at some point, if I know how to use that impatience, it can help people move into action. On the other hand, let's say that you are very quick thinking and you're smart, that's something good, that's a superpower. But if you're always playing to that strength, it can harm you, right? Because maybe you're going to jump into assumptions too quick and think that you have the right answer when maybe you don't. Okay, so thank you for sharing. I know you have more responses, so when I share the video, you're going to be able to read all the comments as well. So that basically brings us to, okay, the exercise we did is about reflection. It's one of the two types of self-awareness, which is internal, how well you know yourself. But you can ask the same question to someone else and say, okay, what do you think is my superpower and what do you think is my kryptonite? So basically, getting that feedback, understanding how others see you is what's called external self-awareness. And this creates like these 4 quadrants. And once again, this is dynamic, and it's not that you're here and it's wrong, you're there and you're not. And if you can see the chart, I'm going to explain a little bit, but you can share where do you think you land. So are you a seeker? So basically you're a little bit lost because you think that your internal self-awareness is low, but also you're not conscious of how other people see you. Are you a pleaser? So someone that is constantly looking for approval, trying to understand how others see you, getting feedback and getting like that input from other people, but you're not really aware of who you are and how you behave. So you're so focused on external self-awareness that you forget to think about that. Or are you an introspector? Maybe some people that spend so much time trying to understand themselves, to reflect about who we are, how they act, and so on and so forth, that they're not paying attention to feedback, to what other people are seeing in them or what other people are telling them. And once again, if you want to share, are you an introspector? Are you a seeker? Are you a pleaser? Or are you aware? If you're aware, it means that you're high on both types of self-awareness. Basically, you know who you are, you know what you want to accomplish, what you want to do, but also you seek out on purpose and you value other people's opinions. So you're high in both internal and external self-awareness. So where do you feel or where do you think you fall in each of these quadrants? And once again, this is not that if you're in one, you're wrong. It's basically, once again, if you know where you are, you can focus on, do I need to move more towards the right? Do I need to move more towards the top? So understanding and being honest with yourself, it's going to help you improve. So are you an introspector? Are you aware? Are you a seeker? Or are you a pleaser? And this is a model that we use a lot with the teams, but also with leaders to assess how they operate and how they make decisions. Okay, so the best way to understand how other people see us, so basically getting that external self-awareness, has to do with getting feedback. No? And I'm not talking about the typical feedback that we hear in most companies, but it's about being really obsessed to get and listen, most importantly, to what other people say or think about you. Because we have a natural tendency that when feedback is not positive or doesn't tell us what we want to hear, we tend to reject it. So, for example, Marshall Goldsmith, which is the founder of the namesake, the Goldsmith, a global coaching firm, he's so obsessed about getting feedback that every night he has a friend, over 22 years now, and they're still friends, call him at night to ask him a series of questions. No, basically, he wants to say, okay, did you do your best? Do you have clear goals? So a lot of questions to help Marshall understand how he's doing, what he can improve, and so on. So that's maybe an extreme example, but there are a lot of ways that we can do to become more aware and to get feedback from other people. Okay? So this is a model that we have when we work with organizations or teams. The first thing that we do is focus on self-awareness, individual self-awareness. Then we collect all that information to collect all the individual awareness of each of the team members. And last but not least, we focus on how we build awareness of the team as a unit, as a whole. No? So you start to understand who are you, your self-identity as an individual, as a team member. What are your blind spots, the areas that you need to work on, your superpowers, your kryptonite. Then helping you reconnect or find or discover or reinforce your personal purpose. What are your competencies, your strengths, your abilities, the thing that you do well? Once we bring that information together of all the team members, we can then move into team awareness. So not the sum of all the parts, but the part itself. How does the team work? So what's the team identity? How the members think about their own team as a unit? What are the team blind spots? No, maybe we're very confident because we have 3 successful sales years in a row, and we believe that this year is going to be as good. So is that a blind spot? It's about understanding what's the team purpose, what brings us together as a team, what are we trying to achieve, what's our mission, our long-term impact, not just within the team, but within the organization or within our community. And of course, all that feeds into team performance that then starts the loop, the cycle again. So now I'm going to get into 5 ways. There are many, but I'm going to, just to keep it short for this initial webinar, what are 5 ways that you can apply to develop self-aware teams? First, very simple, is about increasing and creating a space where people can discuss awareness and how they're feeling, what's going on, their emotions, their thoughts, their issues. So a practice that many teams use is what's called like a mindset check-in or emotional check-in, which is before, let's say, a weekly status meeting that usually take like an hour starts, you are around asking each of the team members to share what's got your attention. And the purpose of this is pretty simple. It's basically to understand what's going on with each of us. You know, am I worried because I have some issues at home? Am I worried because the project is going behind schedule? I'm thinking about a baseball game that's happening at the same time that in that meeting. Whatever is keeping you busy or distracted, by sharing that, not only people can really know what's going on. So, for example, if I'm having an issue at home and I'm not participating in the meeting, instead of people assuming that I'm disengaged, they know that, well, my mind is busy with something else. So they're a little bit more patient towards me. Okay? In that same direction, there are a lot of exercises for practicing mindfulness. I wrote a very detailed article a couple of weeks ago. I can send you a link if you're interested, with different exercises that you can do both individually and as a team to practice mindfulness and to practice being more present, no? From how to increase awareness of your breath, of course, meditation, body scan, no? To spend some time feeling your body, what's going on, what's your tension, do you have something that's like basically tense and making you upset, or some pain caused by your spending too much time in front of a computer, whatever. Try to become more aware of your body, also helps you slow down. What are your emotions and how you label those and become more familiar with your emotions. Journaling, no? A lot of people do this in their personal life, but also people do it at work. Like, try to recap at the end of the day what are the great things that happen and what are the things that, no, typical, kind of what Marshall Goldsmith does, no? At the end of the day, recap on your behavior and think what are things that you can improve or work on or continue doing, because of course many things that you do are right. Another way is to turn blind spots into bright spots. No, there are three types of things. No, there are things that you know, the known knowns. There are known unknowns, things that you realize that you need to become better at understanding, and then the unknown unknowns. Those are the blind spots. Not only you are not familiar with some behaviors or things that you do, but you don't know that you don't know. So this tool that you can see on the screen is called the Johari window, and basically captures and helps you. I'm going to show you in a second how this can play, because they're not just four squares. They shift depending on how you operate, the size of them. And it's basically what's known to you, what's unknown to you, what's known to others, and what's unknown to others. So the arena, it's your public space, are the things that you are very conscious about, your behavior, your thoughts, your feelings, but also you share those with others. But then there's the mask. So when there's something that you're really aware about, an emotion, about a behavior, about an event, but you're not sharing, so you're controlling how much of that is public or private. On the right side, the unconscious at the bottom is basically things that neither you nor the others know about yourself, so that's completely unknown to everyone. And the blind spots, which are the most important thing, because most of the biases and the mistakes and things that we do are based on our blind spots. No? It's like driving a car. You crash the car because there was a part, a section that you weren't paying attention to, and you, boom, crash into another vehicle. So this blind self has to do with what others know about you but don't see. I work a lot with the senior executives, with C-suite executives, and what happens is many times I see that CEOs mostly try to hide certain behaviors. They're trying to hide certain emotions, they're having problems, whatever, and wrongly assume that people don't notice that. And what I say is, like, you're trying to repress or suppress those emotions because you're having some personal things at work or things are not that good or at home. But people know, people see when you are detaching yourself. People see when you're anxious. People see when you're overreacting. So instead of trying to hide that part, opening up. So feedback helps turn those blind spots into bright spots. So this is the same window, but as you can see, as I mentioned earlier, the size of each of the quadrants changed. This is if you're increasing your open area, the arena, like for example, because you're getting feedback that helps you turn blind spots into bright spot, into that open area. If you're disclosing more stuff about yourself, then the hidden area diminishes its size. So that's basically how this tool works. I am working on a post that I'm going to share about this on my website in a couple of weeks. The exercise for you to practice, you can practice with your team, but basically, in a nutshell, is you provide this tool and you ask each person to list 6 to 9 things about yourself, and you do that about everyone else, and then you do that about yourself too. And then you start comparing notes, what you think about your own self, what are your, let's say, my kryptonite and my superpower, and then what other people see, and you can start bringing those together using this tool, and it's going to help you uncover the blind spots. Because if you, for example, think that you're very good at writing, you're very good at analyzing data, and pretty fast at that, or you're very creative as a person, well, maybe people are going to say, you know what, you suck, you're not creative. Well, so you start like comparing notes, and then you see how this window shifts its size depending on that. The same way with the open area and the hidden area. So maybe you think that people know you much better than they do, and so you realize that you need to start sharing more personal stuff or more things so your people can work better with you. Another important factor, it's creating a culture of feedback. Most companies practice feedback like once a year, and basically what they do is they have this employee assessment survey, they send it, and they try to solve all the problems in one time, versus creating a culture that has feedback frequently and it's openly discussed. That's why I like to say, and I posted an article last week about this, if you want to, the link, that's called feedback is like sex. Basically, everybody does it, but very few do it well. And what happens is most people, for example, take for granted that the other person wants feedback. So you know that unsolicited advice doesn't work. So if I'm your boss and I tell you, I need to improve this and that and whatever, and you didn't ask for that input, basically you're going to resist my feedback. Not only you're not going to pay attention, but you're going to become more defensive and probably you're going to get upset. Also, most of the times, feedback is focused on expectations, right? So your boss tries to tell you what you need to improve, what you need to do better, probably sharing how she or he does it better than you do. And that doesn't help people. People don't want someone to tell them how to do their job. They don't want to, but they want to help them uncover the issues, the challenge, and for them to find the way. And lastly, going back to this metaphor, we assume that the other person wants it. So it turns into an experience that we're forcing feedback. Contrary to that, when we build a culture of continuous feedback, teams are more open to this practice of receiving feedback on a continuous basis. So, for example, Spotify has a rule that their feedback is 70, 20, and 10. Most companies focus on the past. They rehash a bad experience versus focus on what you can change today. So Spotify spends only 10% of the feedback time with people, their managers, on what happened. It's not about rehashing your mistakes. It's, okay, now focus 20 here, now and in the now and the, what can we do? What can you improve? What are the areas? And then focus on the future. Let's design a better future together. What do you envision your role could be in the company? How can help the organization grow? How can you contribute to the team? What are the areas that you need to focus on? So by doing that, the feedback experience becomes a more positive one, because instead of rehashing what went wrong, our past mistakes or a bad experience, we focus on what we can do better here and now. Another practice that we recommend, and this is really effective to increase self-awareness among teams, it's finding an accountability partner. We know that no one can change the world alone. And that's why a lot of superheroes like Batman and Robin or Thelma and Louise basically are duos. They're two people that have a shared mission, a shared purpose, but complement each other. And that's why they succeed. So a duo or an accountability partner can help you balance your perspective, can show you the things that, well, maybe you're too passionate, that person is more analytical. Maybe you're a slow thinker, that person is more intuitive and makes decisions faster. So it's about balancing how the two of you work together, but also to help each other grow and improve. It can also help you deal with your kryptonite, not to eliminate, because we are who we are, right? As I mentioned before, it's not strength or weaknesses, it's we have these behaviors, and get this person to help us regulate both our superpowers and our kryptonites. And when it comes to setting goals, this is our go-to person. No? So basically, we define what we want to accomplish, what we want to achieve, and this person is going to help us stay on track, provide feedback, and can be our go-to person for, well, maybe we have a bad day and I need my partner to just listen to me. So we have this tool, and you can download from our website, liberationist.org, and for free, of course. And there's a description of how to use and apply this with your partner. And this tool helps you design that relationship. So it's not just, let's find a partner and that's it. It's, okay, find the right one, but also design how you guys are going to work together. So first of all, I always suggest start small. So choose one behavior that you want to change. Let's say, Gustavo, I want to be less impatient. Okay, I'm going to focus on one thing at a time. Then you have to define 3 goals. They need to be concrete and specific. So what are you going to do? How are you going to do it? And when? So you can track if you're actually achieving those goals or not in order to achieve that larger behavioral change. Then the other part that for me is critical is define that rule of engagement. As I mentioned before, sometimes we get unsolicited feedback or we get a very challenging coaching approach and we don't like it. So how do you expect that relationship to work? Do you want the partner to ask questions? Do you want your partner to simply listen to you? Do you want your partner to be harsh? I mean, define what kind of style is going to work for you. And your partner is going to do exactly the same. And maybe your partner wants you just to be a listener and you want a partner to challenge you. So that's okay. Each one needs to define expectations. Privacy. If you're going to do this in a workplace or also in a personal life, be very clear about what are the things that you're going to be discussing with that person that need to stay between the two of you, or what are things that maybe that person can share or ask for advice to someone else. What are the things that you need to know about yourself? So try to disclose as much as possible. And of course, as this relationship and partnership evolves through time, the more you're going to be able to share about each other, and the more effective then it will become for that person to provide feedback. And of course, last but not least, define how that relation is going to work regarding touch points. So when do you want to meet? Like every first day of the month, every Friday, every day, every month, whatever. For how long? Where? Is that going to happen over Skype, Zoom, Slack, an email, in person, at a Starbucks, whatever? No, define. So this is a really, and as I mentioned again, you can download the tool and also get a full description of how this exercise works, because it's really successful when you do this and you have an accountability partner. Not only you will increase your self-awareness by getting that feedback and that relationship, but you're going to improve a lot of behaviors that you cannot maybe change just on your own. Lastly, the 5th tool or practice to increase self-awareness is to, as I mentioned before, focus on the team as a unit. So how can we increase team awareness? As a team, how are we working together? What are our blind spots? What can we do better? how to make sure that our past successes don't get in our ways, make sure that certain practices are not becoming too repetitive. Do we have clear rituals? Are our team rituals helping us become better, or are we getting stuck because our rituals are turning into very predictable team and we're repeating our practices? So how to do this is, well, there are many tools. You can practice team retrospectives. Many organizations, especially in the software development and technological world, they do retrospectives. In most of the cases, those are based on a project. So basically, the team gets together once a project has been finished or closed, and they reflect on what they can do better, what worked, what not, and try to get some insights, and then they apply to the next project. That's perfect. But you can also have a retrospective about the team itself, to talk about how we're working, how are we collaborating, how are we providing feedback. So focus on the practices and ways of working, not just on the project or on a project. Team retreats and team offsites, it's a very successful way to increase self-awareness as a team, because usually you spend one day together. So in our case, what we do is we start with focusing on individual self-awareness, then building practices among smaller groups, and then moving to identifying how the team is working, how the team is collaborating as a unit. Are there new ways of working that we can experiment with? Are there certain mindsets? Sometimes mindsets are individual, but sometimes as a team, we share a mindset that's getting us stuck. We believe, we're never going to be a winning team. And if everyone believes that, we're not going to move together. If one person believes that, you can work despite that. So team offsites are really great and interesting in order to engage, to get to know yourself better, how to collaborate better as a team, and then, of course, to fix those issues. So in a nutshell, in order to improve awareness, it's about knowing what you don't know. That's critical, It's always better to consider yourself an ignorant, then you're open to new content, to new information, to new feedback, than to becoming overconfident. So sometimes my advice is underestimating how much we know. It's better than overestimating. Ask for feedback, and I share a lot of things, and I write a lot about different ways that you can get feedback from other people at work, at your personal life, and actually from yourself, how you can reflect to help you learn from your own behaviors, and observing yourself from a distance. Don't try, like, every time you're going to make a decision, I'm going to buy a car, a house, you're going to change your job, you're going to launch a new project or invest money. Pause and try to see from a distance and say, okay, why am I doing this? Not if the decision is the right, but what's your driver? Because then you might notice that sometimes you are doing this because you want to show that you are smart, or you're powerful, or you're whatever, and that might lead you to making a wrong decision. So I really appreciate your time, and we have some time, like 10 minutes for Q&A. If you're interested in learning more about what we do and how we help teams increase awareness, you can reach out. That's my email, gustavo@liberationist.org. Or if you have any questions, I always like to help people. Sort of people like, I need more exercise or tools or reading, or I have a question or whatever, please feel free to write. I try to answer as fast as possible in between stuff. We're all busy, but I always take people's curiosity very seriously. So once again, thank you for joining, and we can share. If you have any questions, you can jump into the chat box and share. I'm going to try to answer as many as possible, and if not, you can reach later. One thing to keep in mind, self-awareness requires ongoing practice. This is not that you go to a training or you do a team retreat or you do the duos exercise, the accountability partner, and boom, check. And no. You have to practice on an ongoing basis. Remember Marshall Goldsmith asking for feedback for the same person every night, 22 years in a row. That's commitment to become, I'm not saying you should do that, but aim higher. And remember that teams that learn together, that know and themselves and practice self-awareness together, they grow together, because there's a lot of bonding, in terms of we become vulnerable, we accept our weaknesses, we can share our kryptonite with others, and we together as a team want to improve how we behave as an individual, but also collectively. So thank you again. It was a pleasure to share some of the thoughts about self-awareness. And let's see if you have any questions. So you have some thank you. I appreciate the thank yous. And Marie Stacky, so what do you suggest to do when part of a team wants to work on blind spots and the rest do not? Oh, that's a fantastic question, because I was supposed to mention that before. The most important thing is like, how are you going to manage this? So, because everyone needs to abide by the same rule. But on the other hand, if you push people and if you force them to practice self-awareness, it can backfire. So there are two ways of doing this. One is that a portion of the team starts practicing certain ways of increasing self-awareness. And once they get better, they try to bring someone into the circle and increase that influence. Or there's also like bringing someone external, could be a consultant, like we do a lot of with teams, or someone from a different team to start practicing that. There's a lot of tricks that has to do with facilitation and how a team retreat or it works, that basically it's about tackling those barriers, because people are resistant. It's not that people don't want to know themselves better or don't want to fix their blind spots. Most of the times, they don't want to be exposed. So you have to work on creating a safe space. For example, you need to be the first to share stuff. So people, if you're sharing your own blind spot, if you're sharing your kryptonite, if you're vulnerable as a leader or as a team member, you're also creating that cadence and practice that other people are going to then join the conversation. I have another question. Hopefully I addressed that. What are some more exercises for increasing team awareness? I have more on the website, and I write on articles. I mean, I don't have a list on top of my head, but if you send me an email, I can send you some links, to those exercises. And if you were at the very beginning, I talk also about mindful exercises or practices that can be applied both from an individual or a team standpoint. And I have an article that has those 21 exercises of mindfulness that are really detailed, how to take them to practice. Any other questions or comments or whatever? Okay. No questions, so I guess that you guys are done. Okay. How to deal with irrational people? Like, most people are irrational. We're all irrational. That's it. I think that the most important thing is we need to make sure that we're not attacking people. And I'm not saying that you attack people on purpose, but sometimes when we try to tell people something about themselves, they become very defensive. So the trick is, rather than tell them what you observe, is try to, through questions and exercises, help them realize that. And so I don't know if I'm clear, but if you're dealing with irrational people and you tell them, you're not thinking clearly, you're overreacting and blah, blah, the only thing you're going to get is backfire. People are going to get more overreacting and more defensive. And also, as I always say, and I mentioned before, model the behaviors you want others. So when you start acknowledging your own flaws in front of others, you turn that into a way of encouraging other people to do. There's always people that are not going to jump into that, and that's perfectly. But if the majority of the team does, then the team can move forward. So alignment is ideal, but it's not necessarily what happens in everyday life. No? I also have a question. If I will send you the presentation, you're going to get a copy, a recording of this video. So today, so look for the link. And of course, you're going to see all the slides. And then I'm going to post it also on SlideShare, and you can see the presentation there as well. Okay. So awesome, guys. If you have more questions, we're running out of time, and I want to be mindful for those that need to jump into other stuff. Thank you so much for joining me. And as I mentioned, I'm running a webinar on different topics, one every month. So if you're not subscribed to my newsletter, we'll go to my website and do so, because then you can get notice of the upcoming one, which is in 4 weeks from now. So thank you again. Have a great day, and hopefully you enjoyed and you learned something new. And it was great to hopefully serve you and inspire you to become better at what you do, and have fun.